Welcome to Man in America. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. Look, they aren't even hiding it anymore. Yesterday, President Biden openly proclaimed, quote, "There's going to be a new world order out there and we've got to lead it," end quote. While their plan is moving ahead full steam, pandemics, food shortages, war, cyber attacks, censorship, and more, in the end, it's not going to succeed. But that doesn't mean that we don't have a difficult road ahead of us. And we must be prepared, folks. And this is going to be an incredibly vital show. So a few quick notes for you before we dive in. First off, if you're not following me yet on Telegram or Truth Social, please do so. I'm on there as Man in America. You can find me. All the other accounts are there as well. You can look in the description below, find all my other social media. That's where I'm at. And importantly, today's show is brought to you by Rise TV. Rise TV is literally the reason I can do Man in America full time. Not just me, my wife and other employees as well. With big tech censorship and all the demonetization, they've made it really tough for people like me with a mission to tell the truth. And that's why we built Rise TV. Right now, we're at war, and it's an information war. And Man in America, this is how I'm fighting, folks. Look, on Rise TV, we have a massive content library. And if you want to join the Q&A at the end of the show, there's a link for a free trial in the description below. If you want to stick around, it's $10 a month, and it's a great way to support a very, very incredible patriot project. So come try it out. I think you'll end up staying. And as you'll see in today's show, I think we have some pretty shaky times ahead of us. A lot of you have looked for ways to protect your wealth. I've always been one to recommend physical gold and silver. It's exactly what I do. In the past year, a lot of you have asked me if I had any recommendations as to where to buy gold or silver. I was hesitant to recommend anyone because, unfortunately, there's a lot of shady dealers out there. However, after doing extensive research, I'm confident recommending Noble Gold. You can buy gold and silver directly from them, or you can do an IRA transfer. That's what Noble Gold specializes in, which allow you to transfer your IRA savings into physical gold and silver with zero taxes or penalties. So not only do I recommend gold and silver, I also recommend not being in the stock market right now. And look, I'm not a financial advisor, so this is just my opinion. Do your own research. But if you want to learn more about this, open a tab right now and go to goldwithseth.com, or you can call 877-646-5347 to speak to a real human being based in America who will give you advice, probably much better advice than me. Again, that's 877-646-5347. All right, folks, this show, as I mentioned in Telegram before the show, this is an important show. And look, I've been researching and really nonstop digging into what's happening in the world right now, because from the start of the pandemic, I think for a lot of you, you've seen everything you thought you believed was one way in society to turn the other way. We've seen our entire world completely turned upside down. And for a lot of us, we're wondering, where are we? What's happening? What's next? Is it going to get back to normal? Is there a pandemic 2.0 coming? What's happening? And I'm really trying to make it my goal to understand what's happening through researching and being able to help you see that. Because if we can know what's coming next, we can prepare for it. And look, when the pandemic started unfolding, I quickly saw what was happening. I was living in New York City at that time. In January of 2020, I was living on the 31st floor of a high rise in New York City. And even in January, I saw the elevator packed with Chinese students, because the nicer luxury high rises are full of Chinese students, as you might imagine. Every Chinese student was wearing a mask. This is January 2020, mind you. I saw the writing on the wall. So my wife and I, we had our daughter on the way. We quickly packed up and we got out of New York City. And so at the end of the show, towards the end of the show, and especially in the Q&A, I'll talk to you about things you can do to prepare for whatever's coming. But I'm not going to be selling you some grand ideas. I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm doing and how I'm protecting my family, and just give you my honest advice. And that's the best that I can do for you. I might be wrong, but I'll try my best. But I do think it's really important for us to dig in and understand what's happening right now. So I want to start with something that Biden said last night. Maybe you've heard about the New World Order. And actually, if you're watching this on YouTube, my bet is right below my video, there's a little tag thing that says New World Order is a conspiracy. It's a Wikipedia thing saying that it's just some conspiracy theory. Well, I'm sorry, folks, but it's not. And the New World Order and the Great Reset, these are real things. And actually, the Great Reset is how the globalists plan on bringing about the New World Order. So we're going to dig into that. But I want to show you what Biden said. So watch this video of Resident Biden from last night, and just watch. This is about a minute long.
We are at an inflection point, I believe, in the world economy. Not just the world economy, in the world. It occurs every 3 or 4 generations. As one of the top military people said to me in a secure meeting the other day, 60 million people died between 1900 and 1946. And since then, we established a liberal world order, and that hadn't happened in a long while. A lot of people dying, but nowhere near the chaos. And now is a time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it. We've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it. So anyway.
So from the horse's mouth, he said there's going to be a new world order out there. We have to lead it, and we need to unite the free nations around the world. They're telling us exactly what their plans are. And why I think this video is so important and this message is so important, and why I hope that you can share it with your friends and family, is because if you see what is coming, you can start acting now. And you can put yourself in a situation where 2 years from now, you're going to be in a very different situation than your neighbor that was just turning on CNN. Right? Also, one person I'll give a huge shout out to is Scott Kesterson over at Bards FM, who's been, since the beginning, actually, he was one of the people that inspired me to create Man in America with his County by County series. But he's been covering this a lot, and I think that he's spot on with his message. And it looks like I'll be going on to his show soon, and I'm going to be having him on my show soon, because these are important topics. And look, I know there's a lot of discussion about the red wave of the midterms and kind of fixing what happened in 2020. I'm not taking away from those things, because we have to keep fighting. But what I'm presenting here is a bigger picture of what I think is going to be happening over the course of the next 2 years. And look, I hope to God I'm wrong. I hope that I'm just some whacked out conspiracy theorist in a basement with a tinfoil hat, and that everything's going to go back to normal. But unfortunately, every single point of data that I've seen is painting a different picture. And what you see Biden talking about right there, if you're familiar with the Build Back Better, right? One of Biden's big campaign promises was a Build Back Better. Well, the Build Back Better is just a campaign that all the different UN and World Economic Forum controlled politicians are using. It's all part of this Great Reset. It's part of this plan, as you've heard me talk about a lot. It is literally a plan to take the human population, enslave us, and have us serving the elites. And doing it, though, through a one world government, a one world religion, a one world currency. It's exactly what they're working on. And so what's also important to understand is that they have been setting this up for a very long time. And I'm going to show you a little bit from Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars in probably 15 minutes or so, because it's a document that was written back in the 50s, and whether you believe it or not, it's predicting exactly what's happening right now. But for the people that are saying, oh, this New World Order is a conspiracy, well, take a look at this. So here's Twitter. Let's see what is trending on Twitter right now is New World Order. Now, of course, right, look at the bold information at the top. Unfounded claims about the New World Order conspiracy theory are discussed after President Joe Biden used the phrase as he spoke about the United States' response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine during an address at Business Roundtable's CEO quarterly meeting. Fact checkers, now here's the important part, folks. Fact checkers have regularly debunked claims connected to the conspiracy theory. The phrase is regularly used to describe times of change or cultural shift, right? Okay, by now, it's like no one believes you fact checkers. And actually, this didn't just start now. Trust me, let's go look at what George Bush Sr. said. This was back, and I think this was in the 90s. Let me see if I have a date on this. This was a speech that he gave in 1990. So check this out. This again, George Bush Sr. Watch this. Listen to this.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
There you go. From, for those of you that say, well, it's people, Biden's a leftist.
Andrei Kozyrev was Russian foreign minister from 1991.
Not sure where that came from. So for people that are saying, yeah, it's one-sided. No, Trump was the first president we've had in a very, very, very long time, since probably JFK. And hey, what happened to JFK when he opposed the New World Order and we tried to break apart the CIA and we tried to put us back onto a metal-backed currency? You see what happens, right? What other leaders spoke out against the New Order, spoke out against the global currency, the petrodollar, which we're going to talk about? Gaddafi was one of them. Saddam Hussein was one of them. Vladimir Putin is one of them. Are you drawing the connections here? So a big part in understanding how this New World Order operates, but more importantly, how the Great Reset operates and how they have set things up to lead us into this, we have to understand the global financial systems. Now, I'm going to take a trek back to 1958, and I'm going to read to you a little bit of information that was out of a booklet called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. Now, if you're not familiar with it, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars supposedly was a document that was distributed at the very first Bilderberg meeting in 1958, a meeting where the global leaders came together to devise a plan to take over the world. I mean, it sounds like a James Bond movie, but this is real. And even though it was very, very concealed back then, they're now out in the public with it. You can go look it up. They'll tell you who attends it, everything. So this pamphlet was discovered in the 80s inside of a copier machine. So that's the story behind it. Now, maybe it was intentionally leaked. I don't know. And even if you want to say that this entire pamphlet, this little booklet, was a conspiracy theory, I've read it back to cover, back to front so many times. It is so spot on. So I'm going to read you a little bit which talks about economic warfare and how the global economy will become an essential tool in bringing about this new world order. So let me go ahead and pull this up for you, and I'll do it full screen so you can read it with me. So this is from Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, which says, the social welfare program is nothing more than an open-ended credit balance system, which creates a false capital industry to give non-productive people a roof over their heads and food in their stomachs. This can be useful, however, because the recipients become state property in return for the gift, a standing army for the elite, for he who pays the piper picks the tune. Those who get hooked on the economic drug must go to the elite for a fix. In this, the method of introducing large amounts of stabilizing capacitance is by borrowing on the future credit of the world. This is a fourth law of motion, onset and consists of performing an action and leaving the system before the reflected reaction returns to the point of action, a delayed reaction. The means of surviving the reaction is by changing the system before the reaction can return. By this means, politicians become more popular in their own time and the public pays later. In fact, the measure of such a politician is the delay time. Now, here's a key paragraph. This is the key paragraph of this book, especially for where we are right now. The same thing is achieved by a government printing money beyond the limit of gross national product and economic process called inflation. This puts a large quantity of money into the hands of the public and maintains a balance against their greed, creates a false self-confidence in them, and for a while stays the wolf from the door. This is really important. I'm going to unpack this a little bit, and then I have a video to show you by a guy named Gonzalo Lira, who's a brilliant man that I'd like to interview eventually. But let me just break this down for you. Since the establishment of the US dollar as the reserve, right, the reserve dollar, the standard for the entire world, as the petrodollar, okay, our US dollars are not owned by the US, they're owned by the Federal Reserve, which lends the US dollar to America. The Federal Reserve, then, the global bankers, use this currency as the global reserve currency. So all the other currencies are basically backing up this currency against the US dollar. So we know that in the past year to 2 years, they printed trillions and trillions of dollars. It's like monopoly money. But they printed all this money, which gives us a false confidence. As they said in Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, it gives us a false confidence that the economy is going good. You know, you get your stimulus check for COVID, everything is going great. You know, the U.S. is lending money out to other countries. So other countries are holding a bunch of U.S. dollars. But basically, it's a fiat currency. It's not backed by anything. So you saw what happened in Venezuela, right? Venezuela, which they had hyper inflation, where eventually people were literally taking wheelbarrows of cash to the market to buy a chicken. What we're seeing right now is Venezuela on a global scale, because the United States, through the central banks, has loaned this US dollar to countries all over the world, right? Only a small portion of the US dollar is actually in America. In Russia, for instance, there are more $100 US bills in circulation in Russia than in America, as an example. And what's happening is that this is being set up for a global economic collapse because the dollar is teetering on the edge. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the petrodollar shortly, but the petrodollar, which basically is what establishes that oil, by and large, is bought and sold in the US dollar and maintains the value of the US dollar. Actually, I'll go ahead and pull up, I'll jump ahead really quick and show you here an article here on Zero Hedge, which I highly recommend. Goldman admits, this is from Monday, Goldman admits Saudi-China oil trade signals erosion of dollar reserve status, saying that following the Wall Street Journal's recent report that Saudi Arabia is considering pricing some of its oil sales to China in yuan, the question of the dollar's status as global reserve currency has been bubbled back to top of mind for many long-term investors. This is really important because if the US dollar loses the petrodollar status, it loses the global reserve currency status, the dollar will collapse. With the dollar collapsing will be the collapsing of most nations around the world. Why do you think Putin was selling up all of his US debt? He's getting rid of all of his bad debt. Okay, what if, as an example, let's just say that your neighbor owes you $1,000 and you realize that your neighbor is actually in debt by $100,000. And you know that within about a week or so, your neighbor's going to default on his loan to you. If you can go back to him today and say, you know what, tell you what, just give me $200 instead of $1,000. I'll take that $200 instead. Let's go ahead and get rid of that debt. That would be the rational choice because you know that you're going to lose everything when your neighbor goes bankrupt. That's why you're seeing Putin pulling out of the U.S. economy, pulling out of the U.S. dollar. You're going to see this is a domino effect that's going to happen around the world. And then when this happens, well, it's significant. So I'm going to play a video for you. In this video, this guy is named Gonzalo Lira. And I discovered this through Mike Adams, which thank you, Mike Adams, for showing this to me. Now, it's about a 15-minute video, and I normally don't play videos this long, but his message is so important. Now, what he's going to tell you is frightening, especially for those of you that live in America. But actually, if you live anywhere in the world, you know that America affects everything. So I want you to listen to what he says because he says it exceptionally well. Now, I think that right now, more than ever, is a time that we have to be realistic about where our world is at. We can't go back to putting our head in the sand, hoping things are going to go back to where they were 10 years ago, because the entire global system has to reset. The only thing is it's not going to be their great reset. It's going to be our great reset into a world that's not controlled by the satanic elite, corrupt banking institutions and who knows what. Okay, so let me pull this video up for you. Now, again, it's kind of a harsh video to watch, but I think it's an important one that we need to be very sober about. So let me go ahead and play this for you. This is Gonzalo Lira. I will share his Telegram channel after this. I'll share his Telegram channel with you on my Telegram channel because you can follow him. So just go ahead and watch and listen. It's about 15 minutes.
So this is for my American audience. You who are Americans or living in the United States. I'm here to tell you the truth about your situation at this time. You are about to experience a poverty in the United States that is unprecedented. Nobody alive today in the United States will have experienced the poverty that you are about to experience right now in the next 6 to 30 months. Some of you are already experiencing this poverty that is unprecedented in scope. And I would venture to argue that, 30, 40 years from now, when historians look back on this period, they will talk about the 2020s as the Second Great Depression. For a lot of people, the Depression started in mid-March of 2020. That's when the lockdowns first started. But certainly now, with the gasoline prices skyrocketing, you're going to see a lot more poverty in the United States. And like I said, most of you in the United States probably already know that this is baked in the cake. They already see it. You see it in the collapsing infrastructure. You see it in all the closed shops up and down those bright city streets, Fifth Avenue in New York and Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills and all the rest of it. And they're all closed up, where the expensive shops used to be. And the infrastructure, the airports, they're falling apart. The bus stations, let's not even talk about them. But, the potholes and the whole thing just seems like it's like falling apart. And you sense it, you know it. And you see the gasoline prices and they hit you in your wallet when you fill up your gas tank. And for those of you who aren't Americans, well, the United States has organized its entire existence around the automobile. Most people living in suburbs cannot get food without a car because the supermarket is 3, 4, 5 miles away sometimes. Yeah. I mean, it sounds crazy, but it's the truth. It's not a walkable distance. I lived in some upscale neighborhoods in the United States, and to get to the nearest supermarket was at least a mile away, one way. So you need a car. And of course, gasoline is going through the roof. And so it's hitting your pocketbook. And it's also, of course, going to hit the truckers. And so if it hits the truckers, it's going to hit the prices of the goods and services that you buy. And they're going to start to go up, or they're already going up. I mean, you've seen it. You've seen it in the past year. And, the Biden administration is lying to you and saying that, oh, it's no big deal, And now they're saying, oh, it's Putin's fault. Putin because of this invasion of Ukraine, right? But no, it's not Putin's fault. It's not even Biden's fault. It's not even Trump's fault. And not even Obama's fault, or even George W. Bush's fault. This has been baked into the cake for going on 25, 30 years. This really started with the Clinton administration, when they started hollowing out the manufacturing base of the United States, exporting its manufacturing facilities to countries in Asia and Central America and South America and other places around the globe. Globalization. They emptied out the manufacturing base of the United States, and that was sin number 1. And sin number 2 was right after 9/11, the so-called global war on terror. What happened basically was that the United States government took out the national credit card and started zipping it through the machine over and over and over again to pay for the wars, to pay for a lifestyle that the American people could not really afford. But with a national credit card, i.e. national debt, well, they could afford it because, as Dick Cheney famously said, deficits don't matter, which is true. Deficits don't matter in the moment that you take on the deficit, but eventually you do have to pay it. You see? I mean, we all know that feeling of having that credit card with the, $1,000 limit, $5,000 limit, $10,000 limit, or $100,000 limit sometimes. And we go there and we zip it through and we buy that really expensive thing. And we know that later we're going to have to pay for it, plus the interest. We're going to have to pay for it. But right now we got it. And so we're not thinking about tomorrow. We don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow is tomorrow, and today is today. And today we have this cool thing and we play with it. We use it. We show it off to our friends. And it's great until tomorrow arrives. And you see, tomorrow has arrived. In the United States, the national debt is so high that if it were any other nation on the face of the planet, people would say that that nation is broke. You add on federal debt, state levels of debt, municipal debt, and we're talking 200% of gross domestic product. These levels of debt are unsustainable. And the only reason that they have been sustained so far is because the United States has the reserve currency, the currency that the rest of the world needs to trade. But because of the sanctions that the Biden administration has so self-righteously imposed on Russia and threatened to India and China even, those other countries are moving away from the dollar. Even Saudi Arabia is moving away from the dollar. India is already exploring options to trade rupees for rubles, cutting out the dollar. Without the dollar as the reserve currency, the United States is just another bankrupt country, no different from like Greece in 2012 or some Latin American banana republic. The only difference, of course, is the United States is, number one, bigger, and number two, has nukes and a military. And so this is an exceedingly dangerous time for the rest of the world. And the rest of the world is aware of this. You see, the United States is broke, completely bankrupt. And you Americans who are watching me, it's not that the gasoline is going to go up in price. It's your food is going to go up in price. And you're going to start losing your jobs because companies can't keep up because inflation is too much and they can't raise their prices. And so they're going to start cutting employees, cutting you. And so what's going to happen is that you're going to be unemployed and the prices of goods and services, essential goods and services, food is going to go up and you're not going to be able to buy it. And you're going to actually have to make the decision whether you buy heating oil or food, or try to come to some agreement. Well, you're like, okay, we'll turn off the heat at nighttime and then have a little bit of heat during the day so that we can get some food. And it's not just going to be happening to you, it's going to be happening to everybody in the United States. That's what's coming. And some people in the United States have already experienced this. When their businesses were shut down because of the COVID lockdowns, which retrospectively seemed like so much bullshit, because it was, and thinking people could have told you that, but of course, thinking people were silenced, thinking people were censored. But anyway, spilt milk, water under the bridge. The point is now. And now, because of these foolish sanctions on Russia that only hurt the United States and Europe, the United States is on this downward trajectory because people are realizing that it's over. You see, it's like Wiley Coyote in the Roadrunner cartoons. You see Wiley Coyote, he runs and runs and runs. He runs so fast off the cliff that he seems to be like floating on air until he suddenly realizes, there's nothing below. And that's what's happening to the United States. That's what's happening to the rest of the world insofar as their perceptions of the United States. And people are saying, well, how come the Iranians shot some missiles? That's just the start of it, because other countries are realizing that the United States is over and they're going to start making their moves. Because you see, bottom line, the United States acted like the world's policeman. A lot of people hated America's guts for a long time, but they couldn't do anything about it. But now they're starting to realize that America is so weak, so on the brink. Well, not even on the brink. They're the Wiley Coyote that's gone right off the cliff and it's floating on nothing but air. People sense that the United States is about to crash. And so they're taking advantage of the opportunity. And you're going to see a lot more things going on. North Korea, in China, and also a lot of regional wars, little piddly-ass little shit like stuff in South America, the Middle East, and so forth and so on. Africa is going to be a basket case, but that's not important for this conversation. The important thing is that a lot of people were afraid of the United States, and now they no longer fear the United States because they realize that the United States is broke. And you, Americans are going to pay for it. And you're going to suffer. Now, I'm telling you this because probably nobody's going to tell you this. Certainly your leadership is not going to tell you this. They're going to lie to you. They're going to lie to you and tell you that everything is hunky-dory and that, we're going to fight Putin and we're just going to have to deal with these little gas price problems for just a little bit, but it'll all be better soon enough. And that's a lie. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse, a lot worse. And you will have to make the decision whether you buy heating oil or food. And that choice is not going to be far away. By this time next year, by this time in 6 months, understand what's going on. And this has been baked in the cake for years. It's not a recent thing, and it's a tragedy. And a lot of people in the rest of the world are going to take advantage of this and shit on the United States pretty badly. A lot of people in the rest of the world are going to grab theirs while they can. And a lot of people in the United States are going to demand really crazy things. They're going to demand wars because they're going to say that, it's Putin's fault and we got to go to war. We got to send our military to what? To bring back the good old days? I mean, that's kind of like what's the rationale is going to be. And that's why a lot of people in the rest of the world are so scared of the United States right now. Because you see, you don't pet a burning dog, as they say. And the United States is a burning dog. And people are very, very afraid that the United States, in its desperation, as its economy craters, well, it will lash out. It will lash out and potentially do untold damage to the rest of the world, let alone itself. And you who are Americans, you have to realize that your leaders, the Biden administration, but not just the Biden administration, people on the Republican side too, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, all these people, all these politicians who don't give a shit about you, they're going to try to channel your fear and anger and the fact that you are realizing how poor you really are and how bankrupt the United States really is. They're going to try to channel that fear and anxiety and rage, try to channel it towards military adventures that will cost the lives of thousands, tens of thousands of innocent people, not to mention the soldiers and all the rest of it. Also, some people in the US government can make some money. Also, that some people in the US government can deflect blame. I mean, look at Joe Biden right now. He's blaming the gas price rises on Putin. But these gas price rises and inflation in general were going on for months before the Ukrainian war. But old Joe Biden is blaming it all on Putin. It's Putin's fault. He did it. He's the one. You should hate him. Go ahead and hate on him. That's what they're trying to do to you. Understand what's going on. Your poverty and misery, the kind of poverty and misery you are about to experience in a way that is unprecedented in American history, it's not the fault of Putin. It's not the fault of the Chinese. It's the fault of the American leaders who did stupid policies. Bill Clinton, by hollowing out the manufacturing base of the United States because it made Wall Street more money. George W. Bush and his stupid war on terror that basically unleashed the American credit card to go into these pointless wars that were so incredibly expensive, but the people didn't realize it because it was just on the national credit card. And so people didn't realize the true cost of what was going on. Now you are realizing the true costs of these policies. And now you have to make sure that your incompetent, corrupt leaders, like the Biden administration and like the Republican Party, do not fool you into thinking that it's the fault of somebody else. It's not the fault of anyone else. It's the fault of American leadership. And here comes the bitterest pill of them all. If the United States is a true democracy, then who is responsible for the leadership that the United States has? Because these leaders that we have, they weren't put there, they're not kings, ruling by divine right. No. It's a government of the people, by the people, for the people. You allowed yourself to be fooled And now you are going to pay the price. And the rest of the world is asking you, please don't lash out at us, the rest of the world, because we had nothing to do with this shit show that you are experiencing. You are responsible because you allowed this to happen. And that's a bitter pill, but you're going to have to swallow it.
I told you. Bitter pill. Now, I'm not saying that I agree with everything that he has said there. And I know that I've been watching your comments. Actually, I took myself off the view so you couldn't see me, so I could actually read your comments and understand how you're responding to this. Pardon me. And there's a few ways to look at this. And I want to, as I mentioned, I believe that in the end, we will win this war against the cabal. But as I said in the headline, I believe that we have a tough road ahead of us. Now, I'll share my thoughts on a few different topics related to what he's talking about. One, and this will be quick, devolution. Do I believe that there is some form of devolution in play? Yes. Do I think that Trump has the amount of control a lot of the people believe he does? The people that are saying, just trust the plan and Trump and the Patriots have it all and all that. I don't believe that. This is a war. Like, Trump came in at the tail end of decades and decades and decades of them setting up this system. And if you look at even since the founding of the Federal Reserve in the early 1900s and the takeover of the American financial system by the globalist bankers, they set this up to fail that long ago. So I believe that the role that Trump will play, this is my own speculation, is that as things start to really collapse, especially as people really see through the media, the government, which they are, that he will help soften that and he will help try to create order amidst that collapse. But for the folks that are saying, reading the comments are saying, oh, Nasara and Jassara, and they're going to forgive everyone's debt. I'm sorry, but I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. And some of you might not want to watch me anymore because of that. I don't just want to be a hopium dealer. I don't just want to come here and tell you, hey, everything's going to be okay. Like, go max out your credit cards and don't pay off your mortgage because Jassara is going to come in and it's going to cleanse you of your debt. I just don't believe that. I think that once this system collapses, something new will be replacing it. And that new system will be something entirely different. And towards the end of the show, I'm going to get into that a little bit more, like what I think is happening next. But like, folks, even for some of you, I see that, like, in the chats, they don't want to even think about a reality like this. Like, we have to wake up. Look at the past 2 years. What we saw happen with COVID over the past 2 years was just stage one of this plan. And I'm not trying to scare you. I'm not trying to dishearten you, but I'm trying to speak to you as a friend. My mom, for instance, who she has a hard time hearing some of this stuff, I talk to her about this because I care for her. I want her to take the steps to protect her future. I want her to think about where she's living. Is she in a blue city or is she in the country? Does she have food set aside? Like, I'm speaking to you about these things because I care so much for each and every one of you. I read your comments, everything. I all the Telegram conversations. I care so much about each and every one of you. I want to try to give you my perspective, and hopefully it helps you. Hopefully you're like, wow, you know what, that makes sense. And hopefully you can take actions that will preserve, your family and everything about that in the future, because it's critical. Because I'll show you. And again, I'm not trying to be a fearmonger. I'm trying to be a realist. I'm trying to look at, okay, what's happened in the past 2 years? Look, I thought that Biden would never get into office. I thought that he was going to be arrested January 20th, probably like the rest of you. But they obviously have some level of control over our country. I mean, I feel like we're witnessing this, a slow, controlled demolition of our country. And though I believe that Trump is still fighting and he's still fighting to help save our country, it's still a war. And they still got their guy into the White House. We can't forget that. That wasn't supposed to happen. And all the same people that were they're telling you now that Biden was supposed to get in, it was part of the plan. They weren't telling you that before January 20th. Before January 20th, they're saying, the military is going to show up and, or January 6th, Mike Pence is going to do this. So I'm trying to be a realist. I'm trying to be your friend. And a real friend will tell you the honest truth, even if that truth is a little bit uncomfortable. And the best friends that I have are the ones that tell me and speak to me the true things, even if it's a little bit uncomfortable. Okay? So again, but I still have hope, and I'm going to talk to you about that. But let me just take a look, I want to be very realistic about where we are in history. They are now full steam into their Great Reset plan. They are running full steam into it. And as I mentioned in the beginning, it's food shortages, pandemics, right? What we saw the last 2 years was the pandemic 1.0. They're already talking about pandemic 2.0. They're already coming out and saying that they expect lockdowns again. They're expecting a resurgence of things. They're talking about potential biological weapons in Ukraine that they want to blame on Putin, setting that up. So they're already laying the grounds. They tell you what they're going to do, right? Let me see. Let's look at one of the central control units for what's happening. Let's pull this up real quick. World Economic Forum, right? Now, these guys are the worst, but I still look to them because they tell you what they're doing. And so, I still look at I read their information. It's like Alex Jones. Everyone says, Alex Jones, how do you know everything's right? He's like, I read the documents from the criminals. They publish the documents and tell you what they're going to do, right? So let's look at this. Ukraine, how the global fertilizer shortage is going to affect food security. This is no joke, folks. Right here. Okay. They say, more people around the world will go hungry as a result of the pandemic, high fuel prices, and the conflict in Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine are also major producers and suppliers of fertilizers. If you don't know what's happening with our fertilizers right now, please do some research about that because this is really important to understand our food supply chain. Existing logistical issues with moving grain and food are likely to worsen, and I say a few other things. But what they're saying right here, because they're telling you what their plan is, this is an engineered crisis. We are currently witnessing the beginning of a global food crisis, driven by the knock-on effects of a pandemic and more recently the rise in fuel prices and the conflict in Ukraine. There were already clear logistical issues with moving grain and food around the globe, which will now be considerably worse as a result of the war. They're telling you what's happening, folks. You know what's crazy, though? What's their advice for you? Okay. Their advice is, in the medium term, it highlights the need to transform our food system using more green energy. We should also be encouraging more sustainable diets, which contain fewer grain-fed animal products, and regenerative agricultural practices, which improve soil health and the efficiency of the nutrient use by the crop. They're not telling you to go plant a garden. They're not telling you to go build a chicken coop. They're telling you to eat bugs. They're telling you to get ready for a big change because that's what they're trying to direct us into. They're not trying to help us. Now, let's pull up another article here. This is very real, folks. Right now, I'm not sure if you've been following this. I know Chicken Coop Lady, you're watching. You probably are following this. This is new. Death toll rises to over 12 million chickens and turkeys in the second month of America's horrific bird flu pandemic. This is happening right now. And honestly, I believe this was an engineered pandemic. If there's an avian flu that's being released, I believe that they most likely released it because you can read their books, you can read their literature, you can read their plans. An engineered global food crisis is one of the most important things they can do because that then forces you to go to the government with your hand out to say, can you please feed me? In return, they're going to say, I want to see your passport. Show me your passport, and then we'll give you your food. Or show me your passport, and then I'll give you our digital currency, our CBDC, the central bank digital currency, which you can then go use to buy the food that we approve. So you can't use your central bank digital currency to buy a steak. You got to use it to buy mealworm burgers because that's what's sustainable. This is where they're headed, folks. Look at what they're doing in Ukraine. They're already rolling this out. Ukraine is becoming one of the big major template countries for the rollout of the New World Order, of the Great Reset. Pay attention to what's happening there. So I'm not going to dig in this article too much, but basically there is a massive bird flu that is just starting to kick off. It went from 2 million to 12 million in a couple of weeks in terms of the amount of birds that were affected. So this could be serious, folks. This could be serious. They're also talking about, let me show you this. They're also talking about cyber attacks. Let me play another quick video for you.
Urging private sector partners to take immediate action to shore up their defenses against potential cyber attacks. We've previously warned about the potential for Russia to conduct cyber attacks against the United States, including as a response to the unprecedented economic costs that the U.S. and allies and partners impose in response to Russia's further invasion of Ukraine. Today, we are reiterating those warnings, and we're doing so based on evolving threat intelligence that the Russian government is exploring options for potential cyber attacks on critical infrastructure in the United States.
So again, now they're pushing the cyber attack narrative. What does a cyber attack mean? Well, remember what happened? Remember the insane gas lines that happened? Was it just last year? Because there was a Russian cyber attack on our fuel systems. Remember how that happened? What happens when there's a cyber attack on the power grid? Which my guess is they would do this, right? Now they're creating the Putin boogeyman so they can have a cyber attack on the American people that kicks out our power grid for a couple of weeks and just wrecks shop across our country. And they're going to say, look, Putin did it. They could release a biological weapon somewhere. Oh, Putin did it. They've created the perfect scapegoat for their activities now. But this is serious stuff. Now, I'm going to read you something. I follow Ice Age Farmer on Telegram and other places as well. Let me pull this up for you. This is actually some more really important information. So what's happening in Germany right now is that there is a strong concern about an egg shortage. So here he says, I'll make this full screen for you so you can follow along. No eggs in Germany by summer. So this is an article that he was referencing from the Epoch Times, saying that soy shortages are bringing about the World Economic Forum's post-animal economy. He says from summer 2022, the supply of eggs can no longer be guaranteed, writes the Central Association of the German Poultry Industry. There's sometimes a sheer existential fear among our farmers. The prices for animal feed have more than doubled in a very short time. GMO-free soy is hard to come by. As a result, many keepers are no longer able to restall, says Henner, I'm not going to pronounce his last name, the chairman of the BVEI, who describes the situation. Right, what this means is no more restocking means fewer laying hens are available to lay eggs. This guy expects that the security of the supply with German eggs can no longer be guaranteed by August at the latest. Let's be clear. The letter posted from above German Poultry Association states in no uncertain terms, our supply of animal feed has run out, so our egg supply runs out within 12 to 15 weeks. But it's not just poultry. It is not an isolated crisis, but an exemplar of the full collapse of modern agriculture now in its final moments. Greenhouses sit empty, unheated because the price of natural gas is too high. Fertilizer is not being produced. Ranchers are not breeding animals. They are already culling their animals because there's no feed. Countries have cut off exports, and there is not enough wheat to go around for importers. He says, grow everything you can and be ready with seeds and answers as people are going to be waking up in droves and looking for answers. How could our government lie to us? We all, listen to this, folks. This is an important, here I am again. Look, this is a very important paragraph, okay? We all must do an honest assessment of how we became so dependent on such deeply toxic, self-destructive systems, practices, behaviors, and resolve to better discern and divorce ourselves from them for the rest of time, or else we will simply fail forward into the clutches of the technocrats. No fear. It keeps us from imagining and creating the new decentralized future. Let's make a better one. This is the make or break moment. Now, those are some very, very important points. Now, again, I'll reiterate, I'm telling you this because this is what I see coming. I want to be wrong. I really do. I want life to go back to what it was in the 90s, in the 80s. That's where I was born. I was born in the 80s, right? I can't say it was great in the 60s. It was in the 80s for me. I want so much for life to go back to that. But there's a big part of me that doesn't. Because now that I've understood what's happening in our world, I realize that the life that I look back at is no longer possible. Because that life was fake. That life was propped up by a fake fiat currency being loaned out to countries around the world to keep our economy going. It gave Americans a false sense of security. They led us away from self-sufficiency. Our ancestors, my great-grandmother, I grew up hearing her stories about the Great Depression. She was, catfish. She was, doing fishing lines to catch catfishing. She was gardening. She always had a root cellar in her little cottage. Growing up as a kid, I remember going down in her cellar, and she had a walls and walls of jars of preserved vegetables that she grew in her own garden, because she knew what it was like. She knew what it was like when the food supply cuts off, and she built to survive. And that's the thing, is that as I look ahead, if you were to say, Seth, what is your honest assessment of what's coming? Based upon all the things that I'm seeing and the acceleration of all these plans, based upon the research I've done, the thorough research of the Great Reset, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the Event 201, everything stacked together, I believe that the next couple of years will get more and more difficult for all of us. But there's a silver lining, which I'll get to. But I first want to just be realistic, because in the beginning of 2020, if I could have told you we're getting ready to go into lockdowns, we're getting ready to do this, if I would have told you move out to the country, leave the blue cities. Look, I left New York City in a heartbeat. If I could have told you that, I could have changed a lot of things in your life. A lot of you probably experienced a lot of difficulty because of that. Or maybe because you didn't change your jobs, you were forced to get the jab because you didn't change your job in time and you didn't set yourself up financially to be able to make that change, or make lifestyle adjustments and move to the country where you have more land and you're more self-sufficient. So right now, I'm trying to tell you that now is the time for us to really take this seriously and prepare. Because I believe that, and this is what gives me hope, is I believe that what we're going to have happening over the next couple of years is we're going to have a parallel economy, a parallel society emerge. We know the plan of the globalists, and I hate spending so much time on it, but I think it's important for you to understand. But there's also going to be the plan of the survivalists, the plan of the God-fearing, good-natured, compassionate, kind people. And we have our plan too. And what I think is going to happen is that you're going to see an entire parallel society emerge in the rural areas. When they start pushing their bread lines and their digital currency, and they're pushing their passports to get everywhere. Honestly, I think the blue cities over the next couple of years will completely collapse. If you own a home right now in a blue city, if you're even in a city, right? Realistically, most large cities are blue cities. It's how it works. I highly recommend get out of the city. Even if you have to move an hour outside the city. Look, I moved over an hour outside of Columbus. It's not the most convenient, but I've got 5 acres and I will be able to grow food to support my family and do everything I need to do to survive whatever's going to happen. So I know it's difficult, but if I wasn't being honest with you, then I wouldn't be a friend to you, and I care about you. So if you can, get out of the cities, teach yourself essential skills, learn how to garden, buy seeds. I just got a shipment in today, a big box of seeds. I'm not kidding, probably like 20 pounds of seeds I ordered, right? Because as Ice Age Farmer said, you might have neighbors coming. Can I get some seeds? In the future, look, if I think and when the dollar collapses, which it's teetering, it's like Jenga on like a stack of single pieces of wood. It's like you could go, whoosh, and the whole thing will collapse. When that happens, I think that it's good to have gold and silver and land and items that you can barter, which is going to be food that you can produce off your own land, chicken eggs, if you have your own chickens, which I'm buying more and more chickens, probably building a bigger coop. Seeds, you might be able to barter seeds. You might be able to trade your neighbor's seeds for gasoline to fuel your car to go for your monthly trip into the area to barter. Ammunition, bullets, ammunition will become a currency, right? You can set yourself up for a lifestyle that when all this happens, when this collapse really starts hitting, that you're actually going to be thriving. And to be honest, there's part of me that, though it's really difficult what's coming ahead, there's part of me that is, in a sense, looking forward to it. Not because of the difficulty, not because of the loss of life that's going to happen, but because we're going to be freeing ourselves from this evil cabal, which has controlled our entire world for thousands of years. The same families, the same entities that nailed Jesus Christ to a cross are the same bloodlines and people that are ruling our world right now. But their time is up, because I believe that what's happened, and again, especially since Trump got in 2016, he woke so many people up because their system only works for those who choose to participate in it. We know we have free will, and Satan will try to tempt us and tempt us and tempt us to buy into his way of doing things, but we have free will. And so you can see things, you can escape their system, but don't leave yourself in a situation where you're going to be forced to go to a bread line to get your food. Because do you know how quickly grocery stores now, because of how they run their supply chains, any grocery store is probably about 3 days from being emptied out. Grocery stores do not keep stock like they used to. Doesn't make financial sense. They have it trucked in every day. It's all electronically managed systems. What happens when it's no longer there? Right? And look, and I want to address something, because I've seen people that have messaged, they've said, look, I can barely afford my rent. I've got 2 kids, I'm a single mother, etc. I'm in an apartment. I can't afford to go buy a house. What I would recommend for you is learn skills. Start studying gardening. Start studying even clothing repair, sewing, mending, because also get to know local patriot groups, get to know other local patriots, because you're going to meet that guy that actually has 20 acres. And if you say, look, stuff's really gotten pretty bad, can I move onto your property? I can help you tend your gardens. I can help you take care of your animals. I can sew all of your clothing for you. If you can add value, learn skills that will be valuable in the future. That's how you can protect yourself. But the most important thing I have to say about protection is morality. That is the most important thing, because I don't want to paint the picture that only the people that can afford a 100-acre bunker deep in the hills of Montana are going to survive. Because I believe that what we're experiencing is the beginning of a great catastrophe in a lot of ways. But I believe that similar to Noah's Ark and the Great Flood, it will weed out the evil people. So the people that think they can go hide, George Soros, maybe he's hiding in a bunker somewhere, I don't know. The people that think that they can use their money to hide them, because we know the elites have most of the money. Look at what happened in Egypt and the Pharaoh and the firstborn boys. They thought they could go kill all the children. And God said, nope, it's not how it's going to work. And that evil crept in and took the lives of their firstborn children. So morality is very, very important in this, because I believe this is a battle of good and evil. And I believe that right now we're in a time where we're approaching the period of the Great Flood. And we all have to really try to tune into what God is telling us what to do, really ask for guidance on what to do. And I think that morality is key and faith is key. Look, Noah survived not because he was a billionaire landlord. He survived because he had faith and he listened to what God was telling him. And that's what allowed him and the people that are close to him to survive. So that's a really important thing. And even look, in your, I know a lot of people are saying, oh, America's going to be fixed and Nisara and Jasara. It's like, well, do we deserve that? And that's what I, in a lot of ways, that's what I agree with the Gonzalo Lira. This is our fault. I know that they've duped us with their mockingbird media and their propaganda, but fundamentally we've let this happen step by step by step. whether it was allowing pornography into our lives, allowing our kids to watch violent movies. You stop going to church, you stop being involved in your local school board, you stop vetting your politician, you stop doing your own research, you turn on Fox News every night or whatever media you're watching. We let this happen. We have to take responsibility for this. So for me, if I'm praying about this, I'm not saying, God, please fix our nation. I'm saying, God, please allow our nation, please allow the people in our nation to endure whatever suffering we had ahead of us, whatever suffering is due to us. Please allow us to endure it with grace and faith and get through it and help our fellow man get through it and come together. Because I think that's what we need to be doing right now. And I really do believe, though, that fundamentally, the evil we're up against, they worship Satan. And we can't we can't forget, Satan got kicked out of heaven. Who's really in control here? I think that the time period of the evil to rule over our earth is at the very end. It's why they're freaking out. That's why they're like going crazy, and they're now saying like, this is the new world order. They're trying so hard to bring their plan into place. And for the people that don't have faith, the people that just trust whatever Fauci says and line up for their 16th booster, they may not make it through, unfortunately. They may not. But the people that have faith, they tap into their wisdom and our compassion and our divine nature, I think that we will make it through. And I think what's waiting for us on the other side is a way of existence that I believe will be better than anything we could have ever imagined. It's like when I watch Little House on the Prairie and I think, gosh, you know what? I wish I could live at those times. Look how simple life was back then. But I think that we'll be getting back to that. But we have a difficult road ahead of us. And like what Gonzalo Lira said, poverty, difficulty, struggle. So I hope that you can take these things seriously now and do what you need to do to protect your family. Do what you need to do to really make your faith rock solid, whatever that means for you. And yeah, just do, I think, whatever you feel God is guiding you to do. If you want to, I've talked about it a few times. I did a whole episode on prepping. I'm going to continue to cover prepping a lot because there's actually really, really affordable things that you can do to take care of your family. And you can feed your family for a couple of months just on some really inexpensive food items. You don't have to go and buy the really expensive, prepared food buckets. They're good though if you can afford it and you have the money. But there's a lot of things you can do. So I'm going to continue to cover a lot of prepping. I'm going to continue, digging into those things that matter. And so I hope that you're along for that ride. So shortly, folks, we're going to head over to Just on Rise TV, where we're going to do our Q&A. And it's really more of a Q&A. It's where we get to engage as people. We get to hang out together. There's only, at any given time, there's maybe a couple hundred people there. So your comments are seen, you build community. And as I mentioned at the beginning, Rise TV is what allows me to do this full time. I do this full time. My wife does this full time. We have to have a nanny to look after our daughter during the day so we can focus on this. This is our priority. And I will continue to put out as much content as possible on the free platforms like Rumble and Facebook and YouTube, because I believe this is an information war. And if I was just sitting there behind some paywall saying, hey, I've got important stuff for you, but you got to pay for it, that's not my goal. But I have to be able to pay the bills to be able to do this full time. Otherwise, I'd have a different job and you'd get maybe, one video every 2 weeks. And we've got some great plans. So if you think that what I'm doing is important and what Rise is doing is important, and you're in a position to support us, Rise TV is $10 a month. It has great content. We do a lot more shows over there with a lot of engaging conversations. That's great. If you can't, though, because look, I know that a lot of you are in the situation that Mr. Lira talked about. Gas prices are hitting you hard. Maybe you lost your job because you stood up and you refused the jab. If you want to support, share the video with a friend. And like I said, I will continue doing as much free content as possible because I don't want to disappear. In fact, we've got plans for like really, really jacking up the amount of content that we're putting out there. And I've talked to you about those before, but we have some great things happening. So I hope that today's show was not too much of a downer for you, but I want to be realistic. And for me, being realistic, almost always includes taking a hard look at the evil, the dark, the scary, but also looking at the good things as well, and looking at things like faith and God and family and freedom, and looking at those things together. I'm not really a glass half empty or a half full. I'm a person that's like, okay, you know what? I want to understand the perspective of the half full and understand the perspective of the half empty as well, and carry those both with me. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope you come over to Rise. If you come over to Rise TV and you're just trying it out, let me know in the comments and say, hey, Seth, I'm a new person over here testing it out, or I just joined. Let me know, because I'd love to give you a shout out over there. And if you have any questions whatsoever, even if your question is, how many chickens do you have? How many eggs do you get? Or what kind of gun do you recommend? Or, what kind of water sources do you recommend? Or, what's your favorite football team? And I'll say, I could care less about football. I stopped watching football a long time ago. So sorry about that. But I'm happy to engage in any dialogue with you. And again, there is a link for the a free trial in the description below. So thank you all so much. I love you. I really do. I care about each and every one of you. I read your comments. I know that there's difficult things that you're all grappling with in your life, and that things have just been unfolding so quickly. Your head is spinning and you're trying to make sense of where we're at. And so I hope that I can be a voice of reason for you in this world that has gone completely mad, and just help you feel a little more stable, because I think that we're going to make it. We are absolutely going to make it. I truly believe that. And our goal is to do everything possible so that our friends can make it, our family can make it, the people we care about can make it. So, all right, folks. So Dom, you can go ahead and cut the stream on Rumble and Facebook and YouTube and all the other places too, D Live and Twitch, all those places. So I'll see you all over on Rise TV, but I really appreciate you coming and joining the show today. And so just so so tomorrow at on Thursday, actually, so I think on Thursday I'm interviewing Simeon Boykov again. So that's going to be an amazing, just for an update on what's happening over in Ukraine and Russia. And then Friday is Friday Night Live. So, all right, folks. So Dom, you can let me know over on Telegram, just shoot me a message. Let me know when the